Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with gratitude, and then I want to tell a story, and then I'm going to talk about and lead us into a meditation about how that story might connect with our times and our possibilities, our potential, what we can offer in this time. So, you also began here with gratitude today. So I want to thank Brendalyn for inviting me. I want to thank Tanya, who sent me many emails and helped me to get here this morning because I couldn't find the Zoom link, and I was like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna find you all? So thank you, Tanya. I want to thank Carol and Heidi for their roles, and Brian, and anyone else who I don't know who's actually holding, the bowl of our ceremony this morning, who's holding our space for us to gather. And gratitude for every single one of you who has joined the community this morning and who has taken the time to be together. Even though we have physical distance, I like to say we don't have social distance because we are connecting in this space together in the Zoom room. And I want to say gratitude for each one of your parents and your grandparents and anyone in your lineage who lent their DNA to the unique person you are. And as we think back, we've got 200,000 years of human beings. And prior to that, we go back 6 million years of the lineage of becoming Homo sapiens sapiens. So that DNA thread all the way back, we're carrying something of that. We're carrying something profound of the experience of being on this earth. And if we really extend our lineage back, we go back billions of years, for that first algae forming in the saltwater sea. For we too are made of that, right? We are, as adults, we're like 75% salt water. When we were babies, we were like 90% salt water. So thank you, ocean. Thank you, air. Thank you, glaciers. Thank you, sun, moon, and stars. For we are even made of the elements that are found in the heart of stars. So we know somewhere in our history, the explosion of stars, the nitrogen, the hydrogen, these chemical constituents that we're made of. I like to remember that in my gratitude. We're made of all these things, and we're sustained. We're given life by all these things. So thank you. And thank you, soil beneath our feet, soil beneath our homes, that soil that sustains us. And thank you to all the gardens and the growers who feed us. And thank you for all the bees and butterflies and all the other pollinators. For without you doing your work, the little hummingbirds that are just now, because of the cold, heading back to Mexico. Like, thank you, hummingbirds, for your work to pollinate flowers so there's fruit and seed and therefore future generations. And let us remember, it's not just all of our ancestors we have to hold in gratitude, but all of our descendants. For we're in the middle time here. We're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads between that past and that future, between the beginning of life on earth and the future of life on earth. And because we're standing kind of at a crucial time, a critical time, a dangerous time, a time full of conflict and hardship, it's good to remember the stories of others who stood at a crossroads at a time of conflict. And so from that, I wanted to share one such story. And it may be a story that you know, but it may not be. And the story that I want to share with you is the story of the Great Peacemaker. You may not have heard of the Great Peacemaker. The Great Peacemaker was a member of the Iroquois Nation, also known as the Haudenosaunee. And you may know this. You may know that the Euro-American founding fathers of this country did not themselves come up with an idea of a shared governance because they came out of monarchies in Europe. And they may have rejected the monarchies, but they did not have a model of shared governance, of representational democracy, until they began to study how the Iroquois nation, which is located in upstate New York, governed themselves. The Haudenosaunee people had what they called the Great Law of Peace. And it had practices and protocols for how we listen to each other, how we respect each other, how we make decisions together. And not just the people with power, money, wealth making decisions, but how we sit in council and listen to each other and struggle to compromise, to hear each other and to make decisions together. But that great law of peace did not just sort of drop in. That great law of peace came about through a great struggle, a great time of conflict. And so we're going to go back in time before any European settlers had arrived on this soil. There was a time when he became known as the great peacemaker, was a young man. And the people were in great conflict with each other. No one could even remember the beginning of the conflict. What had happened that had led to such anger and violence and anxiety and frustration and seemingly us versus them and them versus us and difference and distinction and violence, bloodshed and loss of life, loss of future generations. And great suffering of the land itself, for the crops would be failed, for the attention on the war, on the violence and on the conflict. And young men who put their lives as warriors front, also suffering, dying, being maimed, being brutally hurt for life, and the pain of the mothers and the sisters and the daughters and the wives and the children. It was unbearable to the great peacemaker. And he thought, how can there ever be an end to this conflict? It just goes and goes and goes, because every new act of violence had a new grievance, and every new grievance led to more violence, led to fierceness and revenge. What end was there? The great peacemaker did not know what to do, but he knew that he could not participate in the bloodshed. And so he chose instead to put himself at the crossroads, at the place where the two groups would come and battle with each other, the conflict at the crossroads. And he said, I will not take sides. And of course, there was violence directed at him. Well, you have to take a side. You're on our side. No, you're a betrayer if you're not with us. If you're not with us, you're with them. It's us versus them. And the great peacemaker said, anyone who cuts bleeds red blood. I will not take a side. I cannot take a side, because I am the same as both. You are all my family. You are all my kin. You are all my brothers. I cannot choose a side in this battle. Well, he didn't quite know what to do, but he stood there in the crossroads and he refused to take a side. And there was a woman. Her name is Jikonosonse. And we remember Jikonosonse for this act. She was the first to join the great peacemaker. And she was trained in the healing arts. She understood how to heal a wound. She understood that moss was antibacterial and antifungal. And when there was an open wound, you could gather the moss in the forest and you could pack the wound and it would heal without infection. And she had other ways. She knew how to reduce a fever. She knew how to mend, sew the skin closed using sinew. She had many skills as a healer. And she chose to join the great peacemaker. And she said, in this space for healing, we will heal the wounded at both sides. She would not take a side. Any who had been wounded were welcome at that safe house at the crossroads. And so the two of them, in a great and courageous act of love, saw that all were one, all were people, all were related. And when any warrior from either side brought a wounded into that safe house for healing, rules began to be established of how they would relate. You could not kill someone in the safe house. You could not raise a weapon against someone in the safe house. It was a home of healing. And they were courageous the great peacemaker and Jigona Sensei, for they stood for healing, and they began to make rules about how you had to engage in that house of healing. You could not see each other any longer as the enemy. You had to see what you had in common, that both sides suffered loss, death. Both families mourned the loss. And slowly, the community began to see that there in the safe house, at the conflict in the crossroads, where Jigona Sensei and the great peacemaker had made a safe house for healing, others began to join. Others came into the safe house. The safe house and the space grew. It became a larger space with more participants who said, when you come into this space, you cannot raise a weapon. You cannot make anyone your enemy. You cannot engage in warfare. You cannot argue. You cannot debate. You cannot list your grievances. In this space, you come for healing. You come for repair. You come to see each other as relatives. You come to heal through love, through courageous compassion. And eventually, there came a chance that the leaders in the conflict came to the safe house. And the great peacemaker said, now we will bury the hatchet. And that's become kind of a cliche, but it comes from this story, and it comes from the physical act of taking the hatchets used as weapons, and both sides together digging a hole in the earth and literally burying those weapons and covering that place, never to be unburied. And in this way saying, we will embrace peace. We will see each other as kin. We will forgive the wounds, the pain that has been inflicted, the words that have been spoken in anger and frustration and hatred, in the us versus them, in the them versus us. And we will begin to live as I am you and you are me, and we are they and they are we. And these became the foundational practices and principles in the great law of peace as they evolved a way of governing together. So this story from long, long ago comes to mind for me today. And it comes to mind because I know we are living at a time when there is a conflict in the crossroads, right? We're seeing it on the news. We're watching it unfold around us. We see racist versus anti-racist, fascist versus anti-fascist, and this new word Antifa, where did this come from? And how did it come to be that an anti-fascist was not someone struggling for the good of all? But we have this time we're living in. We're living in a time when corporate and militarized private police are hired by the government to tear gas and arrest peaceful protesters. So we have protesters versus the police. We have all kinds of conflict around how we should govern ourselves, what we should believe in. We have Trump versus Biden, red states versus blue states, pro-immigrant versus anti-immigrant. We have tremendous conflict over the pandemic that we're living in because we have confusion. What was the cause? What is the treatment? What is the right thing to do? What is the wrong thing to do? We have conflict over mask wearing and mask refusing to wear. We don't know, even in our personal lives, like, should I go out today? Should I go to the store? Should I go to a friend? Or should I stay home? How should I engage in my community? How should I engage with my family? What is safe? What is appropriate? And what is not? And there's not clarity. So now we have these conflicts within our community, within our families, within our coworkers, within ourselves. What should I do? How should I behave given these circumstances, given the struggles around me? I'm a person of conscience, and I speak to all of you, each one of you here. You are people of conscience. specifically as people of conscience, what is our responsibility in this time of conflict at the crossroads? We might be paralyzed. We might be overwhelmed. We might just be weary. We might want to withdraw. We might want to sleep. We might want to avoid. We might want to deny. We might want to just turn it all off and go out for a walk in the woods, right? And all of these reactions are completely appropriate, you know? We have to take care of ourselves. And yet, we cannot turn away and avoid the times we're living in and not understand there's a conflict at the crossroads. And what can we, as people of conscience who care and who believe in spirit and who believe in unity, how do we actually bring something to the time we're living in? What can we bring to this conflict at the crossroads? What is the greatest unifying force? And we know the answer, right? And it's the theme of today. We know that love is the greatest unifying force. So, how do we love in a time of war, in a time of conflict? What kind of love is this? Because this word love has many, many meanings, right? We can say love, and we mean by that what we're attracted to, what we're comfortable with, what we like. And I love that, you know. I love my friends. I love ice cream. I love, chocolate. I love coffee in the morning. So that's what I like. That's what I'm attracted to. That's what I'm comfortable with. So what kind of love is this that we're required to do to bring something to the conflict at the crossroads? What did the great peacemaker and Jigonsonse bring? They brought courage, courageous compassion, that kind of love. So where in ourselves do we draw up this courage and compassion, right? It's our relationship with Source, just as it was for the great peacemaker in Jigondé Sensei. It's our relationship to Source that helps us see red state, blue state, Trumper, Bidener, we're all people. We're actually all related. People standing, facing off in conflict with weapons at the streets in the cities of our nation. They are still all people. And how do we bring our courageous compassion to the conflict at the crossroads? How do we love who we agree with and who we don't agree with? Doesn't mean we don't have a position. Jigondé Sensei and the great peacemaker took a position. They positioned themselves in the center of that conflict and said, we won't take sides here. Our side we're taking is the side of all of us. How do we take a side for all of us? In that situation, we are also taking a side against something. We're taking a side against weaponizing. We're taking a side against violence. We're taking that side no matter who is bringing the weapons or the violence. And we're trying a practice, which is a practice of courageous compassion, which is the practice of make no enemies. How do I get through my day and I don't make anyone an enemy? When my society, my current time, because of the conflict at the crossroads, it is demanding that I take a side and make someone else my enemy. It is a requiring of me. I land here and they are them and I am us. We are us, they are them. We who support Biden-Harris ticket are us, and those on the Trump-Pence ticket are them, and us versus them, war. How do I say, I might be for, and I have a right to vote my conscience, and I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for. But how do I not make someone who's voting differently my enemy? How do I not participate in enemy consciousness? How do I say, no, we have a right to have different opinions. We have a right to different emotions. We have a right to different choices, even here in this pandemic. Yet we are all kin. We are all family. How do I take a position for unity, for love, for courageous compassion in a time of conflict? We might just start very, very intimately. We start, how do I have courageous compassion and bear witness to my own conflicts, my own inner tensions, where I'm struggling, where I'm competing, where I'm angry, where I'm frustrated, where I've made a them in my life. I've created my uncle, my cousin, my neighbor as them. How do I courageously love myself? And what does that require? For sure, it requires forgiveness. That we forgive ourselves that we're caught in the enemy consciousness, in the making of enemies, in the creation and sustaining of the us versus them. If we, just this group of us gathered this morning, can say, I'm not going to participate in the making of an enemy. I'm going to do what I can in my own heart to be courageous and to recognize the kinship, the similarity, that if we're cut, we bleed red blood, that we are all human beings, that we live in this time together. The pandemic actually gave us a great lesson, because the pandemic said anyone can get this illness. It crossed all national boundaries, age groups, race groups, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientation. It didn't pick and target a group. It said, you're all alike. Even if we know in our country that communities of color and poorer communities and immigrant communities have suffered more from the impact, and that tells us about our social inequity, that tells us about our healthcare inequity. What can we do? What can we bring to the conflict at the crossroads? What can we bear witness? What action can we take? How can we undo the enemy culture? How can we undo enemy consciousness and be able to have courageous compassion at this time? How do we bring it? That's the invitation for loving self, loving family, loving neighbor, loving community, loving nation, loving world. This is a challenge in a time when so many conflicts are happening simultaneously at the crossroads. It's almost, it is overwhelming. And there are times we need to step away from it and rest and withdraw and rejuvenate. But if we draw on our relationship to source, however we name that, as spirit, as God or goddess, Kichimanidu, Wankantonka, whatever language, whatever way, beloved, what our personal language is for our source. That's what we've got to tap into now. Because without source, we can't sustain. We can't be resilient, because it's so much coming at us, so much conflict at the crossroads. And we want to be able, we want to be capable of bringing something, whether it's to our own heart, to our household, to our family, our neighborhood, our city. How are we going to bring something to this time? Where can we make, each one of us uniquely, the contribution that we can make out of love, out of loving, out of courageous compassion? So with that invitation, I want to bring us into a meditation where we'll think about, what is it? What conflict am I aware of, or am I carrying in my own heart? And how can I surround that with love and forgiveness in order to transform something, something that we are carrying in our hearts, some conflict we are carrying, that maybe it's outside of us, but it may also be inside of us. It may be the thing that's most upset us, most frustrated us, made us most angry. How can we take that in this moment, this morning, into our hearts with love? If you want to just place your hands on your heart, let's just place our hands in our hearts. And if you want to look at the images or lower your gaze or close your eyes, whatever's comfortable for you. Just take some deep breaths and feel your body. Just allow your body to sink into the chair where you're sitting. Feel your way of being held by the chair. Just settle in. Let the air fill your chest area all around your heart. Just expand. So there's even more room, more breath in your body. And let that air fill down your spine into your belly. Make your belly nice and round when you inhale. And just let it flatten and soften. Let your chest soften as you exhale. Slowly softening the front of your body, your face, everything softening. And then take your consciousness so you feel your hips against the chair, the long legs of your thighs, the bones resting in the chair, softening your knees, dropping down into your ankles, and all the way to the bottoms of your feet. You might wiggle your toes a little bit. And then from the bottom of your feet, imagine your roots, your energetic roots dropping into the earth, through the floor beneath your feet, through the foundation of your home, down into the soil, into the earth, into the sustenance. Earth is source, and you can draw up life force from deep in the earth, just as the trees do all around us. So feel yourself drawing up sustenance and resilience from your love for the earth, and drawing it up through your feet, into your legs, up your belly, up your spine, up into your heart. From your heart, a great branching out, up through the top of your head. Feel yourself reaching for the sun, the beautiful sun that has come out today. And feel your branches up through the ceiling of your house, out through the roof, reaching for the blue sky and the bright sun. And you, like a tree, are solid in the earth, reaching for the sun, your heart open. Now you've got the structure to sustain yourself as one life form here on earth. Take a moment now to consider whatever it is that's troubling you. What has made you hard-hearted or angry or worried? And surround it with love. Surround that conflict, surround that worry, surround that situation, surround that person. Surround yourself with an egg of light. An egg of beautiful, beautiful light. And surround that egg, fill it up with love. You don't have to know the perfect solution to fill it with love. You can just add love. You can draw on the great examples of all those who've placed love at a conflict, at a worry, at a pain, not knowing the outcome. You think of the great peacemaker, Njagona Sonsei. We can think of Martin Luther King Jr. We can think of Gandhi. We can think of Nelson Mandela. We can think of Mother Teresa. We can think of all those who didn't know the perfect solution, who didn't have the answer in that moment. They only knew the way forward. Let's think of everyone as kin, the beloved community, to surround that difficulty, that conflict with love, to add love, to fill that situation, to fill ourselves, and to love ourselves, and to forgive ourselves where we've drawn up in ourselves a knife and wanted to chop or kill, where we ourselves have wanted to destroy, where we ourselves, and we didn't act on it, had the desire to wound or harm. For we are the same as those who take those actions. We're human. And if you cut us, we bleed red blood. So let us love ourselves and forgive ourselves for any enemy making that we have done. And accept that we don't have to agree. We don't have to believe the same things. We don't have to accept the same truths. We can be different. It's okay. We can even have different opinions within ourselves. We can even have different ideas within ourselves. And we can accept that. And we can fill ourselves with love. Another deep breath. And exhale. And another big in-breath, filling up your whole body and your whole being. And when you exhale, open your jaw and relax it. And exhale audibly, make a sigh. And let go and release anything you can in this moment. Any letting go that will free you and give you greater capacity for your brave and courageous loving. Thank you. Slowly open your eyes and you can see the image of the moon rising over the sea. A reminder that we're part of eternity, that we're part of the ancient ones, and we're part of the coming ones. And if we can bring some love right here, right now, to the conflict at the crossroads, we have opened some space, created a safe house where others can join us. If we can hold that place of healing where no one can make an enemy of anyone else. So carry that with you into your day, into your week, into your month, into this time that we're living in. Thank you very much.
Spirit on earth, and who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world. You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of Spirit on earth, and who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world.